Well, welcome everyone. I'm George Blumenthal. I'm the director of the Center for Studies in Higher Education. And we're really delighted today to have with us Dr. Arthur Levine, who will be speaking to us about higher education in 2040. So let me say a few words about Arthur. Arthur was just retired as the 6th president of the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Association. But before doing that, he served for many years as the president and as a professor of education at Teachers College of Columbia University. And before that, he was the chair of the higher education program and chair of the Institute for Educational Management at Harvard University at the School of Education. And before that, he was the president of Bradford College. So Arthur has had a very distinguished career in a number of roles in higher education. He's written many articles and many books. He wrote a number of articles critical of the higher education, or the education of teachers, teacher education, which he called a field that is both unruly and chaotic. He's the author of many articles and books. His most recent book is When Hope and Fear Collide, a portrait of today's college student. And he's written a number of other books as well, including Beating the Odds, How the Poor Get into College, and Higher Learning in America, Shaping Higher Education's Future, When Dreams and Heroes Died. When Dreams and Heroes Died, a portrait of today's college student. So Arthur has been extremely productive in his career. He's gotten many honors over the course of his career, and I won't try to list them all, except to say that there are many. What really impressed me, though, was that Arthur has received, over the course of time, 17 honorary degrees, honorary doctorates. And that, to me, is an amazing number. Now, I do hope you're not expecting to get another honorary doctorate at the end of your talk today, because, as he walks out, because actually the University of California, as a matter of policy, doesn't give honorary doctorates, out of fear that it would be obliged otherwise to give honorary doctorates to every politician in California. So, without further ado, let me introduce Arthur Levine.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
That's pretty good. This is a very special moment for me. And it's special for several reasons. One is, there are a fair number of people in this audience who are old friends and colleagues who I haven't seen in quite a while. But there are 3 reasons that stand out for me. The first is, I really deeply admire George Blumenthal, and I think his appointment as director of this center was inspiring. Second, this center is important historically. Many of its leaders, its founders, were giants. Names like T.R. McConnell and Lee Metzger and Lyman Glennie and Martin Trove. And the work of the center was enormously influential in shaping higher education in the years after the war, the post-war era. And third, this country is really in desperate need for the center to be a leader in higher education again today. The reality is that in the 1960s and 70s, Berkeley was the generator of some of the most important work on higher education, not in California, but in the world. It managed to combine the efforts of the Center, the Center for Research and Development on Higher Education, the Carnegie Commission on Higher Education, and the Educational Testing Service. They were all within 4 blocks of each other of Shattuck. And now, we really need a leader. We really need a convener. We really need an organization that can help higher education figure out what its future can and will be. And I think this center has the capacity to be that leader. So for all of those reasons, I'm happy to be here. Plus, my wife, Linda, fed to me. Okay. So, I've titled this talk, Higher Education in 2040. Now, 2040 was not a casual choice. It was very carefully considered. Demographic research revealed by that date, I would likely be dead or so debilitated that I wouldn't have to defend my diagnosis. And that was very important. Second, in that regard, I want you to know that I'm feeling really healthy when this book goes to press. There'll be higher education in 2050. Okay. In truth, when Clark Kerr started the Carnegie Commission on Higher Education, he consulted with James Bryan Conant, former president of Harvard, who had written a bunch of best-selling books on the condition of education in America. And he said, I'm going to do a comprehensive examination of higher education in America. What do you recommend? And Conant told him, be concrete, be explicit, avoid waffling. Instead of saying most colleges, say 2/3 of all colleges. Instead of, should be definite as a time frame. Give a year. By 1980, X% of children from the lowest socioeconomic group will be graduating from college. I took that advice. This is a talk on higher education in 2040. So let's get started. The United States is experiencing profound, unrelenting, and accelerating demographic, economic, and technological change. Change of this magnitude and scope, which last occurred during the Industrial Revolution, is very rare. One of its consequences is that all of our social institutions, all of them, we're not talking about colleges alone, we're talking about government, we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about financial institutions, everything was built for an industrial society and now has to be refitted for a new world. This is a talk about the future of one of those institutions, the nation's colleges and universities. It asks how much they can be expected to change, in what ways they can be expected to change, and what's likely to happen in the decades ahead. Now, an army of commentators have already opined on this subject. Academics, journalists, researchers, investors, and entrepreneurs. Their debate has been heated and prolonged. And you can see it. If you were to go to Harvard this afternoon, what you'd find is Henry Rosovsky, who was Dean of Arts and Sciences. And what Henry says the future is that the existing model of higher education will be fundamentally sustained. He says higher education is continually reinventing itself, that perpetual change is built into its DNA. He holds that higher education will adapt to to current societal changes has adapted to those in the past through a process of reform and renovation. If you go to the other side of the campus, to the business school, you'd find a guy named Clayton Christensen. And what Christensen says, that's not going to happen. Change is going to be disruptive. There's going to be a break with higher education's historic past and a fundamental remaking of the enterprise. So we got here are two polar visions of the future of higher education, promulgated by pretty well-known and respected voices, and a cacophony of other voices spanning the poles. In a very real sense today, where you look determines what you see. If we look at traditional higher education, the former is affirmed. If we look at the world of post-secondary education beyond the campus, the latter is suggested. So let's take a quick look at each of them. So if you focus on the nation's 4,000 not-for-profit colleges, higher education certainly doesn't appear to be an enterprise in jeopardy, much less on the verge of collapse. Christensen says the majority of colleges and universities, including publics, will be bankrupt by 2028. Its roots in the United States in higher education are deep, with an uninterrupted, eminent history of nearly 400 years, spanning colonial to modern times, including a transition from an agrarian to an industrial society. It's the first choice of students coming from abroad, enrolling nearly a quarter of all foreign students who go to school out of their own home countries. It's a growth industry and a knowledge economy which demands more educated and continually re-educated workforce than ever before in U.S. history. In the past 20 years, college enrollments rose by 2.5-fold. Associate's degrees awarded increased by a factor of 5. The number of baccalaureate degrees more than doubled. And master's and doctoral degrees tripled. Despite the headlines, despite all the stories, the number of colleges that have failed in recent years is very few. The most in recent times have been 11 in 1 year. And the prediction is they'll rise to 15. There's also evidence that higher education is very cautiously and disparately adapting to new realities. I can't wait to find out what those are. Okay. Demographic, economic, and technological realities. So it's often doing that reluctantly, largely by augmenting or supplementing their existing operations. Internet and mobile technologies have become campus staples. 1 in 3 students have taken an online course. Still, colleges remain more analog than their students. To a far lesser extent, big data and artificial intelligence have appeared in initiatives at places like Georgia State. And we've seen virtual reality at medical schools where they're using virtual corpuses. Virtual corpses. I don't know if they're using virtual corpuses. There are large and small-scale experiments in areas ranging from outcome-based education and time-variable instruction, alternative credentials, badges. New partnerships are emerging between for-profit companies and higher education. The most visible of those was the merger of Purdue and Kaplan Higher Education. So, bottom line, I guess you have to say one other thing. MOOCs originated in higher education. They weren't a product of something that happened outside of higher education. same time, we gotta recognize that higher ed is facing some very real challenges. Criticism of its performance and its worth have increased. Its cost and student debt are urgent problems. Accessing graduation rates are too low, particularly for the nation's fastest growing populations. Digital technology adoption has been slow. Demands for greater accountability and competition from non-traditional providers are on the rise. But there's nothing in this situation that argues against an adaptive approach to change or the challenges facing higher education. Though the pace of change has been slow, spotty, and restrained by collegial governance, it's advancing. Let's look outside of higher education. Let's leave the campus for just a moment. If the world of higher education seems established, staid, complacent, and unhurried, the world of post-secondary education beyond the campus is disorderly, brash, vibrant, and impatient. It consists of a grab bag of diverse and independent for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. There are mom-and-pop proprietary schools, as well as chains of for-profits. There are new institutions that have abandoned key elements of traditional higher education, emphasizing digital technologies, rejecting time and place-based education, individualizing education, creating low-cost degrees, adopting competency, focusing on growing populations underrepresented, and offering new and different certifications. There are knowledge organizations, ranging from libraries and museums to media companies and software makers that have entered the post-secondary marketplace. They're offering certification. They're offering instruction. There are entrepreneurial firms that are attempting to poach higher education's most profitable programs in areas such as general education, business, and education. And they're offering cheaper, faster, they think better, or more convenient versions of those things. Historically, the post-secondary sector has filled the gaps in collegiate education. It's in practice served as an opportunistic competitor to traditional institutions. And it's sought to capitalize on their shortcomings, or perceived shortcomings, in pricing, calendar, location, services, programming, and access. In this manner, it's also served as a lab for innovation, pioneering in new approaches to teaching, learning, and certification. The relationship between the two sectors has always been fractious. And why wouldn't it be if one is based upon criticism of the other, and each one dislikes the practices of the other? The leaders in the post-secondary community are really critical of traditional higher education. They say it's overpriced, low in productivity, slow to change, dated in content, and poor in leadership. Post-secondary educated view today's colleges and universities as anachronistic and heading toward obsolescence, built for the industrial age, not for a knowledge economy. The fact is, there's truth in what they say. Higher education system is tied to the clock. Students progress on the basis of seat time. The amount of time spent in class with a professor, the unit of currency for measuring seat time, is the Carnegie unit, created in 1906 by the Carnegie Foundation. The result is creating a one-size-fits-all system of education in which process and time are fixed and outcomes are variable. Post-secondary educators say that needs to be reversed. So here's what we got. If you sort through this melange of post-secondary institutions, organizations, programs, God, there are a multitude of pioneering initiatives seeking to create the knowledge era university. There are pilots, experiments, and startups. And history shows most of these efforts are going to fail. Nonetheless, the post-secondary community is undertaking them for 3 reasons. 1, they believe the changes required can't be addressed by tinkering with current programs. They constitute a fundamental rejection of higher education's core values and practices, and they demand that colleges and universities abandon the way they've historically conducted teaching. What they're saying is, higher education needs to be reinvented. Second, they believe higher education has neither the capacity nor the will to make the required changes. And third, they believe they have the answers and they know what the future is going to look like. So what we got then is 2 dramatically different visions of the future of higher education. One's retrospective, and the other is prospective. The knee-jerk response from the higher education community is based on the past, and expectations regarding the future is that the current model will prevail. For the post-secondary education community, the go-to response is disruption. It'll be transformed. There's no reason to accept one version over the other. And what I want to do and what I want to talk about today is an alternative. I'm in the midst of writing a book about the future of higher education. And what I'm saying is, if you really, really want to understand the future, you've got to look in 3 directions. The first direction is backward. We've already been through this once. Higher education underwent a transformation during the Industrial Revolution that was every bit as large as what we're going through now. The second is we have to look forward. We have to take all the changes that are occurring, demographic, economic, technology, and project them forward. What's it mean about what's going to happen in higher education? And third, you've got to look sideways. And what sideways is about is lots of knowledge organizations have been forced to change more quickly than higher education. Newspapers, music, video. And the reason is not-for-profits change by reform and repair. It's ameliorative. For-profits change by replacement. So if we look sideways, we can see some of the pressures that might be brought to higher education in the years to come. So what I want to do today is I want to look forward with you. And then what I want to do is stop and have you ask some questions. What I also want to do with you is talk a little bit about looking backward and what it means. So let's start with demographics. Okay? So what's going to happen? The U.S. population is changing color. It's moving, it's aging, and it's coming from abroad. Historically, this is no surprise to you. It's especially no surprise in California. America has been overwhelmingly white. By 2045, whites will make up a minority of the population. They already do it here in California. The change in young people is occurring swiftly. The population under 19 in 2060, whites will only be 3 percentage points higher than Hispanics. And what's happening too, every state facing a different future. California, Florida, New Mexico, and Texas are already majority-minority. New York and New Jersey are very close behind. 10 cities in 9 states are majority black. 28 cities in 4 states are majority Hispanic. 1 city is approaching majority Asian. The fastest growing populations in this country, you all know this, are those with which education has been least successful. The impact and the consequence, and you can hear it everywhere, is there are going to be demands for increasing access and graduation rates, and policymakers are asking for greater accountability. So is business, media, and the public. Pay for performance is on the rise all over America. Okay. College debt and college cost are the third rails politically today. They won't go unchecked. Policymakers are appalled that costs have risen at the rates they have, and families and students are really, really unhappy with the extraordinary debt students are walking out of college with. And we're going to see action. And whether that action is free college, in which 20-odd states already have some version of that, or it's price controls, much like government enacts with healthcare. We're not going to see we have stand. Private higher education, 1 year, now costs more than the average income of a black family in America. Okay, more good news. The population in this country is moving. In 1960, a majority of Americans, 54%, lived in the Northeast and the Midwest. Today, 62% of Americans live in the West and the South. One result is that we got too many colleges in the Northeast and Midwest. And we haven't got enough in the West and the South. It turns out 45% of the nation, remember 38% of Americans live in the Northeast and Midwest. 45% of our four-year colleges and 55% of our private colleges are located in those regions. In talking to accreditors and to states, they think as many as 30% of all colleges in the region, privates, are on the ropes. And they expect to see a significant number of those institutions close, merge. Liberal arts colleges are at particular risk, owing to their small size, owing to their low endowments, their low selectivity. Top-tier schools will be least affected by the demographic shift. The challenge in the West is the reverse. You have a tidal wave of students who can enter or want to enter higher education in the state, and there isn't enough higher education to offer them. So what I would suggest is look for survival-driven experimentation in the East and the Midwest, and innovation at scale in the West and the South. One of the most interesting innovations is one that I understand was discussed here recently, which is California's virtual community college. It seems highly unlikely that UC will be able to accommodate the numbers, or CSU, or even the community college system, by building a plant. We're going to have to go digital. And the West is going to pioneer and whatever that means, and whatever that looks like. Let's talk about aging for a minute. That's a very painful subject for me, but we'll talk about it anyway. In 1960, 13% of the population was 65 or older. 39% were 19 or younger. In 2035, for the first time in U.S. history, the senior population will outnumber the number of people who are 19 or less. Between 2012 and 2050, that population will nearly double. 10 years after that, it'll nearly double again to 84 million. All the baby boomers will reach retirement age by 2029. So here's the problem. We have a population of older people that have historically been paying into Social Security and retirement funds and into things like Medicare. They're now going to be recipients of those funds, no longer paying in. The result will be increasing healthcare costs and other senior programs. The two biggest items in state budgets right now are welfare programs, health, and education. What we're really heading toward is a generational clash, with young people wanting programs in education and older people wanting programs that deal with welfare, health, and senior care. Give us those are the two biggest items in our budgets. The only way to fund one is taken from the other. This is going to be a very heated political battle in the years to come. So I'll tell you what, let's move to another topic, okay? Let's talk about the economy. So the United States is making this transition from a national analog industrial economy to a global digital information economy. Now what's that even mean? It marks the transition from an economy rooted in the production and distribution of material goods to one focused on the creation and dissemination of knowledge. It signals a shift from an economy built on natural resources and physical labor to an economy driven by knowledge and minds. The result is the requirements, the jobs that exist, and the requirements for getting them have changed profoundly. If you went to sleep in 1947 and woke up today, the economic landscape would be nearly unrecognizable. It would be turned upside down. You'd find great cities, the capitals of industrial America, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, Baltimore, to be devastated by deindustrialization and struggling to reinvent themselves in a region of the country that's commonly called the Rust Belt. You'd learn that small western cities, provincial towns like Seattle, San Jose, Austin, and Portland were inventing a new American economy, and their population now exceeded 8 million. You'd find that industrial era jobs in fields like manufacturing and construction and mining had disappeared. They went from a majority of all jobs in this country to under 20% and been replaced by knowledge era jobs. Okay. What's really interesting is that the requirements for getting those jobs, and you know this, they've changed. The recession accelerated the changes. If that's for me, I'm busy, I'm giving a speech. At the depth of the recession, in 2009, 7.2 11.2 million jobs have been lost. Stick with me. By 2016, 11.6 million new jobs have been created. Of those jobs, 73% required a baccalaureate, 98% required some post-secondary education. Of the 5.6 million jobs that have been lost to people with a high school education or less, only 80,000 came back. 5.6 million lost, 80,000 came back. What it means is that there's been no recovery for people with a high school diploma or less. What we really need is, the implication is more education and higher skill levels to get a job. And we talk about it all the time. One of the topics that keeps getting talked about again and again and again is the need for 21st century skills. Which drives me crazy. But what are they? Some of them are the skills that are essential to live in a world of profound change. The things like critical thinking and creativity and continuous learning and crap detecting, discovering fake truths, problem solving, flexibility, and the like. There's another basket. And those are skills associated with the current era, such as technology and media literacy skills, reflecting the shift from analog to digital. Cross-cultural competence, rooted in increasing population diversity and globalization. The things like the capacity to work in teams and in groups, essential for an economic world which is growing increasingly horizontal. Their knowledge literacy and data management skills, collaboration, communication. The bottom line is that in terms of the economy, Americans need more education at higher levels than ever before in history. For the first time, there are more college graduates than high school graduates in the workforce. And what it's translating into are demands by policymakers and employers for greater high school graduation rates, increasing college attendance rates, and increasing completion of college. At the same time, states are driving up graduation standards, though that in no way is reflected in the students who are currently entering college in terms of readiness. So the truth is, much like demographics, higher education will respond to demographic change by adaptation. Higher education will respond to economic changes by adaptation. It won't cause major transformations. Okay, technology. You know, I feel a little like Rip Van Winkle. It's moving so quickly. My grandmother was born before the airplane was invented, and my children were born after people landed on the moon. What's also true is that I think about all the things that exist today that didn't when I was a kid. Alexa, iWatches, iPads, Kindles, smartphones, audio and video streaming, light bulbs. I just wanted to see if you were paying attention. Of course we had light bulbs when I was growing up. Microwaves, ATMs, earbuds, driverless cars. The fact of the matter is the largest hotel chain in the United States, in the world, doesn't own any hotels. The largest taxi company in the world doesn't own the largest provider of music in the world, doesn't own music. I think about things that are gone. They were once cutting edge. They don't exist anymore. Blockbuster for videos, iPods, cassette tapes, CDs, VCRs, Walkman, Netscape. Now, there are many of you sitting here who have never heard of any of those things. But for the rest of us, they were the future. We bet our entire retirement on those stocks. Okay. The daily newspaper. I need to tell you this story. Speaking about time. And as long as Linda's here, I can tell it. It's about my daughter, Rachel. When she was in middle school, they were studying the 1960s, which I thought would have been current events, but it wasn't. So in any case, what happened was, Rachel came home and thought, this is an opportunity to humiliate her mother. So what she would do to prove her mother not only knew nothing about contemporary culture, but also knew nothing about her own culture, she came in and said, Mom, have you ever heard of Woodstock? Knowing my wife could not possibly have heard of Woodstock. And Linda looked at Rachel and said, I was there. And Rachel looked at Linda and said, were you the monitor? I love being married to the Woodstock monitor. Hey, put that out. Get some clothes on. I don't want to have to call your parents. Okay. The kids, I did a study of American college students. And I did a focus group. And in one of the focus groups, I turned to the kids and the students in the group that were on kids. And I said, how are you adapting to the deluge of new technologies that are coming your way? And one student gave me an answer, which I thought was sort of wise-ass. And he said, I later realized it was brilliant. He said, it's not technology unless it happens after you're born. Think about it. Does anybody ask you how you're adapting to the automobile? Or the refrigerator? Or the light bulb? It's always been there. And for people who are in college now, they were born after the founding of Amazon, Apple, Google, and Netflix. If you're in middle school now, you were born after the founding of Facebook, Spotify, and Twitter. A friend's granddaughter was asking him about what things were like in the olden days. And he said when he was a kid, they didn't have computers. And she looked up startled and said, well, how'd you get on the internet? Mobile devices and the social media have been here throughout the lives of college students. It's what it means to be a digital native. One problem we're facing today is that digital natives are being taught by digital immigrants in largely analog schools and colleges. And they all operate in very different worlds. I tried to put a quick list together. How do digital students in traditional universities differ? And what occurs to me is traditional universities operate on fixed time. Semesters, office hours, all the rest. And digital natives operate 24/7. Traditional colleges and universities are location bound. And digital natives are any place, anywhere. Traditional universities are provider-driven, and digital natives are consumer-driven. University-determined programs versus student-determined programs. Universities tend to focus on passive learning, lectures, blackboards, PowerPoints. Digital natives do more in the way of active learning. Universities are more abstract. Digital learners are more concrete. One is analog, the other is digital. One cares about teaching, process, and the other cares about outcomes, learning. One focuses on the individual, and if you violate that, it's called cheating. And the other is more collaborative. One cares about depth, and the other cares about breadth. Floating in a sea of knowledge, this deep. So, the Industrial Revolution occurred in two phases. The first, beginning in the early 19th century, was built of iron and powered by steam. The second, starting in the late 19th century, was created of steel and driven by petroleum and electricity. Today's technological revolution is likely to have two phases as well. The first driven by the internet and mobile devices. The second driven by big data, AI, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and augmented reality. So what's big data? We produce 15.6 quintillion, that's 15 zeros, bits of information daily. Until now, that data set and hunks of that data set have just been too big to do anything with. We're increasingly getting the capacity to retrieve and store and process and analyze that data. And there are going to be broad-ranging implications touching almost every aspect of our lives. What we buy, how we prevent diseases, how we avoid natural and human-made disasters. AI, artificial intelligence. It's a very old joke, and it goes something like this. That the factory of the future is likely to consist of a machine, a dog, and a person. And the dog will be there to make sure the person doesn't touch the machine. Artificial intelligence is self-driving cars, it's computers that play chess, write newspaper articles, read x-rays, compose music. It's robots, drones, and digital assistants. But it's also something that's become part of our lives. And we don't think about it. GPS, ATMs, ticket vending machines. Artificial intelligence, the capacity of machines to perform tasks traditionally required human intelligence. Reasoning, perception, problem solving, decision making and learning. It's machines that can learn without human intervention. VR, AR, that's an interactive computer experience. A form of virtual reality that occurs in an existing environment is AR, and they're all in their infancy. Facebook, on its website it has a story. The reader's on a train, having an intimate conversation with the person sitting next to him or her about their hobbies, intimate relationships, and their goals. There's a wrinkle. The reader is actually wearing a VR headset. The train is virtual. The reader and his companion are avatars. Welcome to virtual reality. The first phase, internet, mobile devices, our colleges are adapting. They're doing it slowly, but they are adapting. The second phase, big data, AI, and VR will produce dramatic changes. We don't need them. We can individualize whatever materials you need. More than that, the assessment system will increasingly look like your GPS. Think about it. Imagine this. Imagine if your GPS worked the way testing does now. Okay, so you get in your car and that's where you're going. And an hour later, the GPS would tell you how you're doing. It might say, you know, you were 12 miles away when we started, but now you're 72 miles away. Recalculate it. That's not really useful. We're going to do the same thing with learning. We're going to find when you go off track, the kind of resources that you need, and individualize those. We're going to see customized education. We're going to see the end of time-fixed and credit-based education. We're going to see new kinds of credentials. I was on an airplane. So I finished the book I was reading. I finished my work. And in desperation, I turned to the airline magazine. And I was reading about the travel agency of the future. And it said, they're not going to have pictures anymore. They're going to take you to where you want to go. Walk around your hotel room. Go into the restaurants. Walk around the beach. You can see it all. If you can do that, why can't we recreate 15th century Paris? Why can't we recreate America on the eve of the Declaration of Independence? Imagine if we could recreate 15th century Paris. Or 15th century Beijing. Imagine if we could do that. Try to imagine, okay? So if you were in 15th century Paris, you could walk down the cobblestones, you could feel them under your feet. You could talk to the people. You could smell the smells, which must have been putrid because there was no sewer system. Imagine, how would a stand-up lecture on 15th century Paris compare to that? We have the capacity to take our students to places real and places imagined, places long past, and places yet to emerge. We also have the capacity, remember, we have all these students who are coming to college in California, for which California has no colleges, or not enough. We can create virtual colleges. California's creating a virtual community college. And the person who's doing that is Booker. But imagine, today, the proportion of students who are 18 to 22, full-time, and live on campus is under 20% of all college students. Under 20%. What my research shows is the majority of people attending college today want only convenience, service, quality education, and low cost. In-class parking would not be bad. Classes 24/7 would be great, unless they can be offered more frequently. In any case, what we're really facing is students who drive to campus, take a course, and drive home in most of American higher education. Why do they need a physical campus? We can create that campus. It's possible for Professor Blumenthal to offer a class here, for me to take that class in New York, and for another student to take that class in Shanghai. It's possible for me to nudge the student from Shanghai and say, I'm sorry, my mind, have it translated into Chinese, have her answer translated back to me. hear what Professor Blumenthal just said. It's possible for him to assign a project between me and my Chinese counterpart, and for us to present it in class next week. It's possible for me to have tea with my Chinese counterpart. If I can do all of those things, why do I need the physical plant called a college? So what we're left with is this. I think we're going to see one other major change. One of the consequences of artificial intelligence is that we're seeing more and more jobs lost to automation. 80% of job loss in this country is associated with automation, not jobs going abroad. And the half-life of knowledge is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And so there's going to be an increasing need and increasing demand for education for upskilling and reskilling throughout the lifespan. What we're going to find, and this is a really interesting study, so the estimates on how many of our jobs are going to be touched by automation is somewhere between 5 and 47% of our jobs will disappear. That's a pretty big range. But there was a study done by McKinsey, and they said, let's not look at job titles. Let's look at job responsibilities. And what they found was 53% of the work, on average, that people do will become automated. So who's that going to affect? Well, some are obvious. Cashiers, administrative assistants, clerical support, but it's also going to touch doctors and lawyers and journalists. So here's what we know. First, some industries and occupations are likely to be automated. They'll be automated out of existence. In 29 states, the most common job now is truck driving. That's not a real growth industry, to be a truck driver. Guesstimates the demise of trucking, anywhere between a decade and 25 years. Second, most Americans are going to see major to minor changes in their jobs owing to partial automation. Third, even industries that are unlikely to be affected by automation are going to find that the half-life of knowledge getting shorter. They're going to need to have their skills updated. And they're going to need to be reskilled. And what we're going to see is a real change in what people demand from college. Historically, we've gone to college to get degrees. And it's sort of like just-in-case education. We'll give you 4 years of education, just in case you need it. Increasingly, people are going to come to college for just-in-time education. I need to learn the latest coding language by Thursday. And that's going to be a very different breed of education. What it means is, we're now talking about, and by the way, I expect that demand will be a larger demand for traditional degrees within a decade. What's going to happen is just-in-time education varies in content, it varies in duration, anything from a few hours to several years. It ignores uniform course lengths, traditional credit measures. It deliberately and intentionally champions variation. Just-in-time education requires a non-clock-based academic system. It's rooted in the outcomes. Either you've learned that new programming language, or you haven't learned that new programming language. It's not how much time you spend learning it. Given that just-in-time education isn't going to lead to traditional degrees, we're going to see the rise of all kinds of new credentials. People talk about badges and micro-credentials. They're going to soar in the years to come. And that's going to require a change in the nature of a college transcript. It's not going to matter so much where you learn to do it. It's what you know and what you can do. And a transcript will be a lifetime record of all the things they've learned to do and all the things they know. And the providers, if colleges want to do it, they'll certainly be a potential source. But there are others. Other not-for-profits. PBS is now the largest professional development source for teachers. The museum around the corner from me is now offering a doctorate in astrophysics. And I went to visit a publisher. And I looked at all the books on his wall as I was waiting for him. And he came out and said, you know, we're not in the book business anymore. Looked to me like he was in the book business. He said, let me give you an example. Subtext. Let me give you an example even you can understand. He said, we are now doing professional development for teachers. And we are in 10,000 schools. No university in the United States is in 10,000 schools. He now had my full attention. At the time I was president of Teachers College, that was not good news. I thought I still had it. I said, where are you getting your content from? Thinking he had to come to me. And he said, we're hiring full-time content providers. I thought about that. I don't know any full-time content providers. My parents had no friends who were full-time content providers. My neighbors aren't full-time content providers. So I turned to this guy and said, what's a full-time content provider? And it turns out we just had different names for them. I called them professors, and he called them full-time content providers. The difference being that I couldn't offer stock options or bonuses. I still thought I had it. I said, what about certification? He said, we're still working on that. They're not working on it anymore. They have degree granting authority. That's the world we're talking about. It's the world we're about to enter. So what it means is, bottom line of what I've just told you, what we're saying now is, we're going to meet the challenges of demography and the economy and the initial stages of technology by adaptation. But in the end, new technologies are going to disrupt the traditional model of higher education. It'll focus on learning over teaching, outcomes over processing the clock. It'll end time-based instruction. It'll cause demise. It'll cause demise. How would you end it? In Carnegie units, individualization of education. Outcome and competency-based assessment will rise, new certifications, lifelong transcripts, multiplicity of higher education providers. And where we stand right now, I told you I've written a chapter about looking backward. It turns out during the Industrial Revolution we changed in 7 steps. The first step was broad criticism of higher education. The second was higher education fundamentally rejecting the criticism, saying, oh, I got it, you're wrong. The third was broad-scale experimentation, trying everything. Sort of the Industrial Revolution version of what I just described. Then models came into being. There were places like Johns Hopkins that invented graduate education. There were places like MIT that took technology education to a new level. There were places like Cornell, which created a comprehensive university. Then came dissemination and diffusion. And what happened with that diffusion was, it looked like the wild, wild west. They couldn't even agree on what a course was. So they created a sheriff. One sheriff was a common standard, the Carnegie unit. Then we knew what a course was. And the other was accreditation. And then finally we integrated the whole thing, and that came to fruition in California with the master plan in 1960. One of the most interesting factors, I think, in this whole account is that all those innovations and all those models spread because there was an institution that stepped forward, and leadership at that institution that pressed for diffusion, that pressed for adoption, that pressed for the spread of all of these programs. And there was a guy named Charles Eliot at Harvard. We're going to need the same thing now. We're going to need an institution, and we're going to need a leader. And I can't think of why Berkeley shouldn't play that role, and why this center shouldn't play a major part. Thank you all very, very much.